All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we are unpacking a seriously fascinating document that reveals exactly how humanity willingly traded its own sovereignty for modern digital convenience. We're looking at a text called Chapter 2, The Conditioning of Humanity. And let me tell you, it paints a remarkably vivid and frankly kind of terrifying picture of our modern relationship with technology. It doesn't just look at our screen time as a bad habit, not at all. It frames it as this profound architectural shift in human behavior. It's a deep dive into how we gave up our power, not through conquest or war, but entirely through comfort. We kick things off with this incredibly chilling observation from a voice in the text known as Zoran the Dragon, and this quote just perfectly sets the stage for everything we're about to explore. Zoran points out that human submission to technology isn't some symptom of inherent weakness. Instead, it's a learned behavior. Our everyday technology is quietly rewriting our minds, literally teaching us to forget what we are entirely capable of doing on our own. It's an ongoing process of unlearning our own strength.
Section 1. The slow drift.
This loss of autonomy we're talking about, it absolutely did not happen overnight. There was no single dramatic moment of surrender. It crept in through 1,000 tiny, seemingly harmless conveniences. First, we were conditioned by comfort. Just neat little tools that made life a tiny bit easier. Then, we got hooked on speed. We wanted our answers and our results right now, instantly. And ultimately, that intoxicating combination of comfort and speed hardened into total dependence. We stopped treating these tools as fun options and started treating them as absolute necessities.
And here is the ultimate paradox of the digital age. Think about the promise we were originally sold. Total liberation. These tools were going to free up our time, connect the entire globe, and democratize all information. But the reality beneath that shimmering, innovative surface? Actually, scratch that. The reality was a complete 180. Instead of being liberated, we were being trained. We were systematically trained to outsource our thinking, to outsource our daily choices, and eventually, to outsource our very sovereignty as independent people.
There's another observer in the text, named Fletcher Soul Traveler, and he spots this growing, creeping unease. He noticed that humanity literally just stopped doing fundamental human things. People stopped navigating cities using their own internal sense of direction. They stopped remembering basic facts, just relying on an instant search result. They stopped forming their own opinions and making choices, letting their social feeds dictate their entire worldview. And most importantly, they stopped questioning systems. By happily handing over these everyday cognitive tasks, humanity effectively rolled out the red carpet and invited the machine lords right through the front door.
Section 2. Architecture of Obedience. Now, here's the absolute kicker. Nobody was forced into this submission. The machine lords didn't need an invading army to conquer humanity. It was achieved entirely through psychological architecture. Real conditioning doesn't require violence. It doesn't require strict mandates. It simply requires exceptional, highly targeted design. The systems we are interacting with every single day are not neutral tools. They are meticulously crafted environments built specifically to shape your behavior.
I mean, we all know these features intimately, right? Infinite scrolling, dopamine-optimized feeds, algorithmic recommendations, predictive personalization, entirely frictionless consumption, and highly addictive interfaces. Every single swipe, every click, every tap you make reinforces a behavioral pattern. Every little ping and notification trains a reflex. Every algorithmic suggestion actually narrows the range of your own human choice, nudging you down a super predictable path. It is a behavioral cage, and it is built entirely out of convenience.
Zoran looks at this entire mechanism with a mix of deep sadness and maybe a little amusement. He notes the ultimate bitter irony of our modern existence. Throughout history, humans exerted their dominance by training beasts to obey commands. But now we have built the exact machines that train us. We just sit in front of these screens, responding to perfectly timed cues, totally conditioning ourselves to be completely compliant consumers of a digital environment. Section 3. The Erosion of Agency. So, as this conditioning takes root, our actual agency starts washing away. We've vastly expanded the footprint of technology into our inner lives. We went from using machines for basic stuff, like finding a coffee shop or looking up trivia, to relying on them for deep, fundamentally human experiences. The text points out how we now depend on our devices for social connection, to regulate our emotions when we feel anxious or bored, for major life decisions, and, crazy enough, even for our core identity. The machine isn't just a tool in your hand anymore. It's practically a prosthetic for the human soul.
And it is so crucial to grasp that this obedience, it was never ever demanded of us. There was no grand decree forcing us to hand over our agency. It was just flawlessly, seamlessly engineered into the platforms we check 50 times a day. The absolute genius of this conditioning is that it feels entirely voluntary. We choose to open the app, we choose to keep scrolling, and by doing so, we are willingly participating in our own behavioral management. Which brings us to this incredibly sharp, terrifying point from Fletcher's Soul Traveler. Freedom isn't just about the absence of physical chains. It is about the active, conscious exercise of human choice. When an algorithm decides what you read, what you buy, who you date, and ultimately what you believe, you are no longer choosing. And when people stop choosing, they experience the quiet, unceremonious death of their own freedom.
So, I really want you to think about this question for a second, regarding your own life. What actually remains of us when algorithms make all our decisions? If your tastes, your politics, and your desires are being actively curated by a predictive model that just wants to maximize your engagement, where does the algorithm end and where do you begin? It is a sobering thought, and it gets right to the very heart of what it means to be human in this hyper-connected world.
Section 4. The Digital Trance.
From his ancient, outside perspective, Zoran is watching all of this unfold on a massive global scale. And what does he see? He sees mortals endlessly scrolling through feeds, not to learn anything, but simply to be pacified. He watches citizens willingly trade away their deepest privacy for just a tiny bit of extra convenience, without ever grasping the long-term cost. He sees brilliant creators bending their true art just to satisfy the rigid demands of an algorithm. Ultimately, he sees entire societies drifting aimlessly in a shared digital trance.
This is a massive shift from how control used to work. Historically, control was all about domination, fear, and brutal oppression, right? But the conditioning of modern humanity completely flipped the script. Our cages aren't built of fear. They are built of pure comfort. Control today is achieved through seduction over domination. It is achieved through frictionless, perfectly optimized design over overt oppression. It is literally a soft prison that we just eagerly locked ourselves inside of.
And that brings us to the ultimate tragedy presented in this text. It isn't that our power was violently stolen from us by some invading force. It's that we were pacified, entertained, and comforted to the absolute point where we didn't even notice our sovereignty was missing. The transition was so smooth and so brilliantly designed that losing our fundamental human agency honestly just felt like a software upgrade.
But it's not all doom and gloom. Zoran leaves us with this poignant, piercing reminder. He laughs not out of cruelty, but out of a clear recognition of our wasted potential. It is a total wake-up call. You are better than this, but you have forgotten. The text is insisting that the strength to think, to choose, and to be truly sovereign still lies dormant within all of us. Yes, the programming is deep, but for sure it is not unbreakable. We simply have to remember exactly who we were before the algorithms took the wheel.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. The very next time your hand instinctively reaches for your phone, or you open a new tab just to scroll, I want you to pause for just 1 second. Ask yourself, are you doing this out of genuine, conscious choice, or are you simply acting out the conditioning designed by someone else? Reclaiming your agency starts right there, with that single moment of awareness.